Okay, so we're recording now. So I want to welcome everybody. This is a conversation I've really been looking forward to because I adore animals. And our guest is April Kelly, and you can see her here. Thank you, April. I'm just going to read a little bit about you for folks that may not know you, although you're so polymath and so talented that I'm sure most people do know you already. But April is a conservation biologist, anthropologist, a wildlife filmmaker, a children's book author, an expedition leader, and an international flight attendant. She has a bachelor's degree in anthropology and geography from the University of North Texas and a master's degree in zoology, wildlife, and environmental conservation from Miami University in Oxford, Ohio. April has spent over a decade working in remote jungles, oceans, mountains, and savannas all over the world, including fieldwork expeditions in Belize, Borneo, Namibia, Costa Rica, Brazil, Ecuador, Australia, Hawaii, Mexico, and Nepal. This is an adventurous woman, I tell you. She's completed fieldwork courses for grad school in Belize, working with manatees and howler monkeys, Borneo, working with orangutans and 9 other species of primates, and Namibia, working with cheetahs. Nambia. So Bill is like joked is that April's got all the speeds covered in the animals, from the fast jaguars and cheetahs to the slow moving turtles and tortoises. April has conducted field work all over the world with multiple different endangered and threatened species, including her most recent projects with jaguars in Costa Rica and Brazil. She has assisted the nonprofit Climb for Conservation since 2016 as their wildlife biologist, leading conservation expeditions and treks in multiple countries. It's like staggering here that what you do. In addition to her extensive field work, she's also filmed, directed, and co-produced the film Mark of the Jaguar, which premiered in 2021 at the Wildlife Conservation Film Festival in New York City, and, of course, won the award for Best Endangered Species Film that same year. And she was examining the coexistence between humans and jaguars in that region. In 2020, in response to the devastating fires in the Brazilian Pantanal, April co-created the Pantanal Relief Fund initiative with her friend Abby Martin and raised over 75,000 people for the people and wildlife there. April founded the women-led nonprofit Conservation Wild in 2021, which she now runs as the executive director. And if you're feeling a little bit woozy from all of this, I can understand, because this is a lot to take on. So April, again, welcome. I salute you. So cheers. I mean,
Thank you.
oh,
Cheers.
wonderful. Cheers. She got her tea. So, I would say really most people do love animals, but they see them
Yeah.
as pets. They have their domestic pets. But you work with so many things here. We were talking earlier, and I have to say, April, I've had the good fortune of actually being able to meet with her beforehand, not unlike some of our guests. So it's been great. We have much to talk about. But you can explain a little bit more, because not only the animals that I think people are attracted to, like jaguars or cheetahs or whatever, but you've worked with bats and rhinos and reptiles and pangolins and giant otters. So how?
Yeah.
So first, tell us, I think, how you got into this. Like, what made you become an expert as a conservation biologist?
So yeah, thank you first of all for having me. It's wonderful to be here on International Women's Day. And also our 3-year anniversary of when I started Conservation Wild, which just happened to be on Women's Day, and I like realized that after I started the organization on the same day. So it was fate, because we're a women-led organization.
That's perfect.
um,
Perfect.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I've always had a really deep love for animals, even since I was really young. And I know a lot of people who love animals will say, like, when they were younger, they always wanted to be a veterinarian. That's like the little kid idea of what you can do with animals, because there's no other profession that they know of that works so closely with animals. So when I was little, I did want to be a veterinarian. um, and over the years, as I went through schooling and had the fieldwork experiences with different animals, obviously that changed. Instead of being a veterinarian, I went the wildlife route, and decided that I was gonna work in wildlife conservation. And I originally started in anthropology as my bachelor's, because I wanted to be a primatologist like Jane Goodall.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask, like, what drew you to the wildlife? Especially growing up in the United States, we don't really have so much access or, a relationship with wild animals.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I always was really drawn to animals and nature since a very early age. My parents and my family like instilled that into me. We had tons of animals and pets growing up, like all different animals, not just like dogs and cats and fish and rabbits and stuff, but we had like a ferret, and we rescued a turtle, and we were always like rescuing little animals. And then when they got to be either too big or weren't happy in the urban environment, then we would take them to like a sanctuary or preserve and release them onto the wild property.
That makes so much sense, like your background story that got you into it. Okay, but then there's so much schooling that goes on with it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I originally, like I said, went into anthropology for my bachelor's, thinking that I would become a primatologist and work specifically with primates, monkeys and great apes. And when I was in that program, my passion kind of evolved into also including people and cultures. So I
Yeah.
loved the people and cultures aspect of anthropology, not just the physical anthropology, which was the primate side, and the scientific studies, but also the people and cultures aspect, which is the branch of cultural anthropology. So I started loving both of them. And at the time, I still didn't know what I was going to end up pursuing as a career. Um, but then I found my master's program, and when I found that in zoology and wildlife conservation, um, that's when it clicked. It was like, this is what I want to do. I want to be a biologist. I want to work with wildlife. I want to be in the field, hands on with these animals, knowing that I'm like on the front lines, making a difference in their protection and preservation.
Oh, wow. Well, a lot of people, I think that's like a fantasy for them, like an escapism or something, or maybe they might do on a holiday. But then I'm going to jump right in and we'll come back to some other things. But when you're in the field, what does that look like? I mean, are you in rivers? Are you in jungles? Are you like, how do you, take that on? And for how long do you go?
Yeah, honestly, there's no like typical day in the field. Sometimes I'm there for weeks at a time. Sometimes I'm there for a month or more. Sometimes I am, like you said, in jungles, like in rivers, trekking through deep jungles covered in like mosquitoes and leeches. That was in Borneo.
People find that fascinating. And what are you looking for there? Are you tracking the animals? Are you talking
Yeah.
to the locals or what's
Yeah, so we yeah, both. So like the one in Borneo, we were tracking orangutans, and that's when we were like trekking through like deep forested area, for probably like half a day in really really extensive heat, like the hottest place I've ever been.
really?
It was like upward above 100-degree temperatures with 90% humidity. Um, so it was basically you just like stood still and you were drenched in sweat because it was so hot and stifling. And having to trek in that for miles and miles at a time was even more exhausting. But, dealing with the elements and the weather and the insects and the bugs and all that, um, it's all worth it once you find a wild orangutan and you see like what happened for us, which was pretty magical, is it was a mother and a baby. And
Oh,
so after so many hours of like trekking through these terrible conditions,
yeah.
and it's so hot and tired, we finally came upon this mother orangutan and her baby, and it was just like you just forget about the rest of it. You forget that you're so hot and tired, and you're just like so in awe that
I
you're
can
able to share this space with this beautiful creature.
I can understand. So are you taking lots of notes or is it video? Do you work with the locals? Like what's the goal of, going out and doing all of this extreme adventure? And for folks that don't know, I read it, but just to emphasize, you can go on an expedition with April. She's a leader, expedition leader, so she takes you out. But
Yeah.
when you go on your own and then you go where you bring people with you. But when you go for scientific study, what is the goal that you have?
So in the majority of the locations, it's two goals. The Borneo story was during grad school, so that I don't do so much of that intense field work anymore. Now that I run the nonprofit and lead these other types of expeditions, the main goal in every location we work in is to do data collection on the species. Monitoring. In Namibia, we put GPS transmitters on pangolins in the wild. We help assist with that type of field work through our partners there, the Pangolin Conservation and Research Foundation. But that's just an example of like the types of tracking. So it's mainly for monitoring these species, but also in the areas that we work in, we don't just do wildlife monitoring and protection. We work with the communities and the indigenous populations in those areas. Um, and it's mostly to get an idea of what they need best. So
Mhm.
we don't just go into these areas and be like, this is what you should be doing, and we're going to tell you how to do conservation and that kind of thing. That's like completely opposite from what we do. First we go into these areas and we ask them if they even want help, for one thing. And if they do, then we ask them what specifically would make your lives better and help you in your livelihoods and in the protection of your community, your culture, your land, and the wildlife that live among it. And so it's different in every location and it's really different in every community, but we want to give them a seat at the table
Mhm.
in the conservation implementation that we provide in those areas.
That's so smart. Speaking of tables, Bill's, while we're talking, he's just going to show you a little bit. So for those viewing, my tablescape this time is a homage to April. So not surprising, lots of green, a little bit of fantasy. We got some jungle going on, and we got lots of jaguars, which I read is like the fabric now, and with napkins, lots of elephants, flamingo birds, and turtles. The turtles were in our family's totem as a Lenape. But so when you, it's very, very sweet. So
So cute.
when you're in, when you're in, the field, like doing this with your visitors, are they participating in the data collection also? And yeah, so I'll ask that first. Yeah.
Yeah. So on the expeditions for Conservation Wild, we lead fieldwork expeditions in the countries that we are already working in with our partners. So other people can come into the field with us. It's mostly biologists and other conservationists that are interested in these trips, but they're open to anybody who is really interested and wants to join. And basically, we take them into the field. We teach them how to do the different types of field work that we're doing. So like setting up camera traps, we teach them how to do radio telemetry, which is basically like you're tracking an animal that has a tag and you're using another device to get a signal from that tagged animal and basically track to see where that animal is. So we teach them how to do that. So it's the expeditions are very hands-on, and you also get to work with the local organizations and the local communities. So you're learning not just from us, the Conservation Wild girls, but you're also learning from our local partners and the real like experts and people that are like on the front lines doing that hard, difficult field work.
I think that's so fabulous. And for people that want to join, this makes such a big difference. Is that I read just, I think, last week, and that they said there's more travel going to places that people feel, given climate chaos, might not be around for a long time or may change so much. But just going and seeing, and you can leave a bad footprint that way. But here, it's like the best of both worlds because they can go with you and actually do something constructive and learn while they're also seeing these places.
Yeah.
So kudos to you. Does do the funds help fund you and the organization?
Yeah, so the main thing that the expeditions fund is donations that we make to our partners in those locations. So like for example, the pangolin organization I was telling you about in Namibia, Pangolin Conservation and Research Foundation. When we lead expeditions to Namibia, the base costs are covered, but in addition to that, we also have an additional amount that is covered by the participants coming, and that all gets donated to PCRF.
That's wonderful. That's
Yeah.
wonderful. We're going to come back because April has a GoFundMe program. So we're going to have that all across social media and a way that you can participate in that. But so you'll look for that text because it's a website link that you can, get onto. So I love those pangolins. Are absolutely, I find them very cute. I mean, do you have a favorite animal that you work with?
Yeah, I've actually never worked with my favorite animal. My favorite animal is tiger. And that's because when I was younger, the first animal I ever fell in love with was a white tiger at the Fort Worth Zoo in the city that I grew up in.
Oh my,
Yeah. And although I've seen tigers in the wild and I've been, in the areas where they are in the wild, I've never done specific field work with them yet, and I've never like had a project that was specific to tigers. So hopefully in the future, I have lots of friends that work with tigers that we could do projects with in
uh,
Nepal. But yeah, Nepal is actually where I saw the wild tiger, but never done actual field work with them yet.
time is coming. So tell us a little bit. I mean, you're so talented. I'm going to come back to this and the cultural preservation in a minute because that is so fascinating and dear to my heart. But tell us about your movie. I mean, you made this film, the award-winning film. I mean, how one just jumps in and makes films. I have a cousin who's an Academy Award winner, so I know what goes into that.
It's actually it's a very it's I'll try to do a concise story because it's kind of a long story of how I got into filmmaking. But basically, it was because of a man that I knew that was a friend of mine named Dr. Alan Rabinowitz, who is the co-founder of Panthera, which is the largest organization in the world dedicated to wildcat species. Um, and when he passed away in 2018, I wanted to do something to honor his legacy, and the work that he had done for 30, 40 years to protect jaguars and many other animals in the world. So I asked a friend of mine that had climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with me. His name is Dave Taylor, and he owns a production studio. And I asked him, I was like, Dave, would you want to make a movie with me? Just randomly. And he goes, well, it has to have the right story, and we have to, get some good background stuff and all that, and there's some funding work that we got to do. And I told him like kind of the story of the area that I wanted to film in, and he was like, yeah, let's do it. So that's kind of how
Well,
it came about.
this is going to be key to your GoFundMe in the future. Who can say no to you, April? Nobody. That's it. That's it. So then you went filming on site and you captured these animals and
Yeah, so the area we filmed in is called the Pantanal of Brazil, and it's the largest tropical wetlands in the world, and it's the best place in the world to see jaguars in the wild. And because of the work of Panthera and Dr. Alan Rabinowitz and his colleagues, there's been a huge shift in the area from like a cattle culture and a culture of like killing jaguars, and the shift has become ecotourism around the jaguar's protection.
mm,
So the idea behind the film was to not only highlight Alan's work and Panthera's work in that area, but also to show the coexistence between the local communities and the jaguars and the wildlife in that area. So it's really a story of coexistence and resilience in an area that used to be completely different and used to generate income in a completely different way, and that has the mindset of the locals and the communities has changed because of the work of this great man and Panthera.
and your great work. I mean, would you say, so, you know, you've made such a difference and an impact with the Jaguars. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that and maybe some of your other successes that you've done. Because I'm going to, sort of take a leap here, but I'm guessing that, a lot of the conservation, it's not just hunting and things, but from my horticultural background, I know maybe it's like environmental degradation, people are encroaching on these areas. Like what leads to that? And then how do you get your success?
Yeah. So I think if so for this area, it is a huge cattle culture. So one of the other things that was and kind of still is a threat to jaguar populations and other wildlife is the expanding of land for ranching, and the clearing of the land for cattle ranching. Um, so yeah, I mean, right now Panthera is doing this huge coexistence project where they're working with the landowners more now, so they can find better solutions for coexistence. Um, and the conservation in the Pantanal, it because it's so dependent now on ecotourism, something that is really incredible is a project that my friend Abby started, and that's the Jaguar ID project. And it's kind of like a citizen science organization where it allows the people who come to the Pantanal to see jaguars, it allows them to be a part of the conservation and the identification of the jaguars. So it the whole setup of the Pantanal is an incredible story of how it started and how and where it is now. So it would be a really cool thing if somebody had started filming from the very beginning of ecotourism in Pantanal and like continued to film right now. So
Because
yeah,
see the progression and
yeah,
the yeah, the success of it. Well, I'm going to have to dig into that a little bit more because that sounds just, incredible. And
yeah.
how do you get people to participate in that?
Yeah, so we lead expeditions to the Pantanal every year now. I started leading them in 2017 and 18 with Alan and his best friend Howard, Dr. Howard Quigley. And I've just continued to have a really good relationship with Panthera in the Pantanal. So I've continued to lead trips where we bring other people, other conservationists into the field with us. And now we support 4 different local organizations that are conservation focused in that area, including Panthera, which has created a school on their property for the local children. So the school is one of the organizations that we support with our expeditions to the Pantanal.
Oh, God bless you. That's fabulous. I mean, I'm going to say also, well, I'll come back to that in a second. But outside of this, what is like, do you have a milestone that you're most proud of? And what does it look like for the future? And maybe then you can tell us a little bit about what you hope to do with the GoFundMe.
Yeah, I think personally, my biggest milestone would be creating Conservation Wild. It started as like a small dream, and I just kind of decided to go headfirst into it, even though I have no business experience or experience running an organization or any of that. But I had the passion. I saw a need and a gap in the work that needed to be done. So I created Conservation Wild to fill that gap and also to give women in conservation a voice and a place where they could feel supported, and like a community. So I think, yeah, Conservation Wild would probably be my biggest accomplishment, I would say, to date.
Yeah.
Um, and it's definitely a lot more work than I thought it would be running an organization.
It sure is. That's why I say you're so inspiring because very successful people often say, if I knew how much was involved or how much work, I probably wouldn't have taken it on. So in that case, a little bit of ignorance is some bliss. But, I am just in awe of, first of all, you need so much education and schooling and what you have. It's not, I mean, there are many people who support it, from rock stars to, you know, everyday people that want to support conservation, but you have the technical knowledge and skills to bring this kind of empowerment to lead a conservation effort. So this isn't the definitive answer I was going, but I was wondering, did someone inspire you? I mean, there probably weren't a lot of women in this field, no pun intended, but when you started, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like specific women that inspired me. I mean, besides the normal ones of like Jane Goodall and um, yeah, I mean,
I researched and it was like hard to find, but I'm thinking you're the generation that's going to inspire the next one. I mean, if you gave advice to young women today, saying they want to, kind of do what you're doing, what would you tell them?
yeah, honestly, I believe that the future of conservation is women. There's so few women in the field of conservation and in the field in general, like out doing the tough work. That it's really important that we find those women and support them as best we can. So yeah, I believe that the future of conservation is women supporting other women. Um, my late great mentor, Dr. Alan Rabinowitz, used to say to his donors, I have the dreams, but you have the means.
Oh,
So I feel like when women with the means help support the women with the dreams, the ones that are on the front lines,
yeah.
we're unstoppable. That's where the magic happens.
It's
So that's kind of my goal. One of the biggest goals with Conservation Wild is I want to build this really strong team of women supporters and women, field biologists and just everybody in the field of conservation, and just kind of give them a really strong protection and support, to keep doing the really important work that they're already doing.
That's so noble. I love that. And I think Mother Nature is a woman, a mother for a reason, because I like the way you said that women are the key to the future success, of all of this. So just a little bit, because we're going to run out of time, which I can't believe, but I want the audience to know how you balance all of these things. Like first of all, you have some merchandise. I love this, that I got this, great bracelet from you. I've been wearing it ever since, the Conservation Wild, and it goes in my very glamorous Black Panther bracelet. So I love that. And I got your book, which is great. I'm gonna, share that so that people they can get some merch books, which is great. And you have
Yeah,
a
those are journals that I make. So I also do a lot of like wildlife photography wherever I am in the field. And so I take some of my photos and I make like notebook journals that you can buy on Amazon. So it's all different like species. That one's from Africa and Namibia with the beautiful giraffes.
I love them. They're so unique. I mean, animals again are incredible. So you have this, and this is the way that people can support you also at the same time in buying your products or donating to the cause, which I think is wonderful. But how do you balance all this? I mean, I talked a little bit in the overview that you're also a flight attendant, so you have to have money to pay for all of these things. So all of us have our side hustle and our career thing to do. So without going into too much detail, but how do you manage this? Is this another, superwoman trait?
It's a fine balance, I would say. I do both full time. So I fly for half of the month, and then I'm in the field for the other half of the month doing either field work or conservation wild expeditions or working with our partners. So yeah, I mean, so far it's going pretty well. I don't have much free time outside of going doing both of them. But yeah, it's going well. I'm hoping that eventually I'll have a salary for running the nonprofit, so I don't have to work as hard.
Yes,
uh, yeah, but yeah, for right now, it's a fine balance, but I think I'm making it work.
I think so. And I can just see from, the times that we've spoken that you have a very optimistic attitude and, probably a good network of support also, which I think is sort of key to all of that. But
Yeah,
so so two things. I know we're going to run out of time, but and we talked about that cultural preservation and ancestral knowledge, but I think what you do is very unique and special because you bring in the locals and
yeah,
the people who live there. And I think when you look at a holistic approach to the future, it's not just going in and taking things and bringing them back for the North or our Western way of thinking. So maybe you could touch a little bit on that before I want to get on
yeah.
to, yeah.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I wanted to do with Conservation Wild is not just save species of wildlife, because that's where my passion is, but
Mhm.
also, protect and support the local communities. If a community has no way of making income and has no livelihood and has no water or food, that why would they want to protect wildlife? Why would they, you have to make sure that they're supported as well in order for them to want to protect and save the wild populations of animals and the habitats.
Yeah,
So it's not like a new concept in conservation. There's many other organizations that are realizing this now and focusing a lot on helping the communities and the locals. I think what sets us apart is we really try to focus on indigenous communities, and support and try to preserve, not just support, but try to preserve their local knowledge. They're the ones that have been on that land for hundreds of thousands of years. They know the animals, they know the the biodiversity, the habitat, the natural world in that area, and they know how best to protect it.
yeah,
And we really need to be able to take lessons from them instead of telling them how to do things, and also to help them preserve that indigenous knowledge. So many cultures and indigenous like ways of life are being lost, because the new generations from those communities are going off to get educated or into the cities, which is amazing. But at the same time, it's really important to preserve that cultural aspect as well.
exactly. I mean, that is so, so critical. So I, bow to you and toast you for that. I mean, I don't know if they have it in the animal world, but in the plant world, this Nagoya Treaty, which is a global, sort of promise. The only one that doesn't do it is the United States, but any monies that accrue from the benefits of the plants,
Mhm.
must go back to the local indigenous community. And
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so, I was, maybe there's a way that the animals, can do that too, for people. But so tell us a little bit more about the GoFundMe. Like, what do you expect to do and what do you hope to do with that?
Yeah, so the GoFundMe is in support of an Indigenous reforestation project we're doing with a group of women in a local community in Brazil. So there's an area of land that has been like degraded and destroyed and like cut down. And so we are trying to help them reforest their native lands and territories. And the project is Conservation Wild, which is a women led organization, and it's in partnership with another women led organization that is Brazilian, and it's called Shalana Esperanza. And they're one of our local partners that we've been working with for a little while now. And yeah, so they have helped us find this Indigenous community that needs funding and support in the reforestation project. They'll collect native seedlings, they'll plant those seedlings into a new nursery that we'll help build, and then they'll use that to reforest and plant those bigger trees into the land to repopulate the native species.
Wow, that is very ambitious and very noble, and I know it's going to be successful. So I'm going to do everything that I can to help promote that because I think that's the way for us going forward is that we have to respect the local people and their habitats because the world is united, no matter what folks want to think otherwise, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to put up some of your links here so that folks can see. You can follow April. She was just in Japan on a fabulous business trip. I loved her photos that she had. You could see her skill and her talent there, where she took them in front of the temples, which is beautiful. And
Oh,
yeah, so her Facebook page there, you can follow Conservation Wild, right? Let me take this. Yep.
yeah.
And I don't know, do you use your LinkedIn? That people can follow you there. From a business standpoint, I would say that there's a lot of corporations that really could use, having worked in corporations myself and looking for very good causes that align with your brand. I mean, April's organization is perfect for so many. So you have the dollars, and I'm going to put it out there that they should look into you and help support you. So anyone on
I mean,
LinkedIn?
well, so I started a LinkedIn, but I don't know if I ever actually started it. Like I know I registered an account years ago, but so many people recently are like, you have to get this LinkedIn. And I'm like, okay. So I don't think it has anything on it right now, but I will work on building the LinkedIn profile.
They will find you. They will find you here. So no matter what, it's like a very good thing. So, I mean, again, I could keep talking because I find you absolutely fascinating and so inspiring that you did this. You just keep thinking of ways to, give back and help and support other women and our planet and nature. But so outside of the things that we've covered, and I know I'll be writing a lot about it, so y'all can like watch, the blog and YouTube and different things. But is there anything that I didn't ask you that you say, Leanne, you didn't ask me this, and I want to tell people about?
Mm, I think one of the things is I think maybe the most interesting thing about what I've learned in the field um, is that on a basic level, all people and humans that I've met are the same. They all want the same things. They all want their families to be safe and healthy. They want themselves to have good health and quality of life. But the biggest thing that we all have in common, I feel like, is purpose. Everybody wants to feel like they have a purpose and that they're making a difference in the world. And I've learned that in every location in the world that I've been to. I've traveled to over like 100 countries now between the two jobs. And literally every single person I meet, it's like the same basic needs and wants. And purpose is one of the biggest things that I've taken away, is that everybody wants to feel like they have or find their purpose and feel like they're making a difference. So I hope that with Conservation Wild, it gives other people an outlet to make that difference and to hopefully find that purpose, either, through donating or through joining one of our trips, or just like following our account and our, the work that we do. So hopefully that will inspire and be interesting to other people as well, and allow them to make a difference in a certain way that they want to be able to be known for.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. So I don't want to add any more to that except to second that and say I totally agree that people want to make a difference. And I think through your inspiration and what you've done, you've laid out a path, you've laid out a journey that people can follow. And I think it would be fun for them, at the same time, to find a community that thinks like they do and to help make that difference. So it's you're just a joy, a total joy.
Oh, thank you.
I thank you so, so much for taking the time. I know how busy you are, and we'll all look to the future to supporting you and your continued success.
Oh, thank you so much. Happy International Women's Day.
Yes, how perfect, and your anniversary. So thank you.
And and our 3-year anniversary.
Yeah,
Cheers, and thank you so much, Leanne.
my pleasure. Bye bye.